Hi, my name is Chuck Michael. I'm a presidential direct distributor with LifeWave, and many segments of this training are designed to give you the information you're going to need to build your team, but most important, to give you kind of a rally point for your group, because if you're new in the business, obviously you don't really have all the answers, but it's a place for you to have your people come and provides a great resource so everybody can get up to speed and really understand the business very quickly. And one of the questions that I get very frequently, and because I get excited when the question comes in because I understand the answer, and that's what I want you to do, is why did LifeWave choose networking to take the product to the market? In other words, there are different distribution channels. And I want to take a minute, it isn't really business 101, but those of you who are on this training, you've got probably a business background. And I think it's important to understand that the distribution system, the distribution channel that a company chooses many times defines the product. Now that seems odd, but that can be really the secret sauce that makes that company very successful. In other words, the way they take that product to the market. And the one that comes to mind, and one that I'm sure you're aware of, was a fella who was sitting in his college dormitory, and he had a concept of taking a product to the market through the internet. Well, his name was Michael Dell, and today he's probably in the Fortune 500 as one of the wealthiest men in the world. But he didn't own those computers. As a matter of fact, he didn't even assemble them. What he did is he was the first to take that product through a distribution channel called the internet. Now, in 1978, 1980, that was new stuff. We see it with Google. Google, its whole distribution channel, and the way it markets its services is through the internet. So that is a channel. So when you look at the different options that a manufacturer or an inventor, in the case with David Schmidt, David had options of taking the LifeWave product to the market. So let's take a look at the distribution channels. And I think if you're mindful of this, it'll really help you in understanding why where we're positioned today is pretty powerful. One of the first that always comes to mind is what I call the big box. Now, big box distribution, we all know it. It's Costco, it's Walmart, it's Sears, it's Target. In other words, it is its own channel. And they don't try to be anything else. Now, there will be a little bit of a crossover to the internet, perhaps, but the preponderance of money and revenue that those manufacturers make is by distributing their products through a big box environment. And it is a channel, and I don't know, it's a $1 trillion industry, certainly, but it moves lots and lots of goods and services. Now, the one thing about this type of distribution is hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising. Because if you don't have a significant ad budget, you won't even get your product put on a shelf in a big box store, guaranteed. Because they do not allow a product to come in, take shelf space, and just die. They want to make sure they get the turns. And how do they get the turns? Because the manufacturer is spending, well, Procter & Gamble, $5 billion with a B is their annual sales budget, okay? So significant money is spent in advertising to drive that product through the big box store. And then you can look at another side, which is just straight retail. And this is everything from the more boutique environment. And in just retailing, there's a little bit more hands-on. For instance, in a boutique, maybe it's an art store, maybe it's an antique, maybe it's where the owner's in the store. In retail, there's a little bit more of a hands-on environment that you really don't get in the big box. People just flow through, stuff their shopping carts, and they're on their way out the door. Retailing, it's the smaller shopping center, it's a retail merchant, but this also is driven by lots and lots of money in advertising. And I don't know, it's probably a $1 trillion market. I can't give you the exact numbers, but we all know that retail is big. Another very, very big one that we know about today is on TV. It's the 1-800 numbers, right? We've all seen that. If you need an ab cruncher, or if you need an exercise machine, or if you need the latest cabbage slicer or whatever, it's the 1-800, it's the infomercial. And the infomercial business is huge. Again, it's probably $75–80 billion is driven through infomercials. Now, infomercials, there is not a big ad budget, okay? The advertising is more directly allocated to the pitchman on TV that's selling the cabbage slicers. But still, there's a lot of money spent in promotion. Okay? And that's what drives it. It's just a little bit more direct drive to the viewer with the 800 number flashing on the screen. But again, it's another major distribution channel. Now, one that we know in our generation over the last 20 years is the internet. Now, there are companies that only market on the internet. When I get travel tickets for hotels or rental cars, I go to Expedia. Now, Expedia.com is my link to buying goods and services. I don't go to the big box stores. I don't go to retail. I don't go here. I go to the internet. I fire up Expedia, and I order my American Airlines or whatever my plane tickets are. So the internet today is another monstrous distribution channel that we've really seen spawn in our lifetime. Okay? But the distinction I'm making is that if you're an inventor or if you're a manufacturer, you've got to decide, how do I want to take these goods and services to the market? Well, one that I'm going to touch on is called networking. Now, what we sometimes overlook is that everybody who's had products and has made that decision, they've taken a look at the networking concept of taking the goods and services to the market for one reason, and that is efficiency. What's so unique about networking is it's word of mouth through friends and family. If you were to define how do products move through a network, it's word of mouth, friends, and family. Now, I like to emphasize that because a lot of people get into LifeWave, which is a networking distribution channel, and the first thing they think is, well, I'm going to run some ads. I'm going to buy leads. No, that's not the nature of networking. Networking from its very inception, 50, 60 years ago, was all driven, and I mean today, companies that do $5, $6, $10 billion, all through relationships, because there's what's called a geometric kicker in a networking channel. In other words, if I tell 3 or 4 who tell 3 or 4 who tell 3 or 4, if you do the math, I've just covered 30 or 40 people. All right? So you get that geometric kicker, just like someone who recommends a great restaurant, and it just keeps word of mouth spreads very quickly. So that's the nature of networking. Now, how big is this industry? It's monstrous. It's at least $100 billion. In other words, over $100 billion with a B, goods and services move through the networking environment every year, and they're companies you've never heard of. For instance, I've done a lot of traveling to Japan, to Taiwan, to Malaysia, to the Philippines, and there are networking companies in those countries I've never heard of. Okay? So if you add them all up, it's huge, but they're all driven with the same concept of word of mouth through friends and family. Now, why is that important? It's important because all of this disappears. And instead of it going out to the ad agencies, and Henry Ford said it best, he said, I know that 50% of all of the money, and back then he was probably spending $100 million in advertising, was the Ford's budget. He said, I know that 50% of all the money that I spend on advertising is a total waste. 50% is total waste. The problem is I don't know which 50%. In other words, which part of my advertising budget do I jettison? You can't figure it out. So what you do is you throw lots of money into lots of advertising avenues, hoping that you catch a certain market segment that's going to buy your products. I mean, we've seen the Super Bowl, we've seen the blimps, we've seen Budweiser. It's ubiquitous. Now, they don't know what campaign is best, but what they do know is, A, they all cost money, and they know that if they do enough in saturation, they'll drive their brand. So all of this money that is going out in advertising, companies today are beginning to rethink that. And the reason that people are paid so handsomely that really get after and grow a team in networking is because rather than it all going out in the ad budget, it goes to you. And it goes to me. It gets to the folks who are out there spreading the word. Now, there's a saying in networking which is true. If you talk to lots of people, you make lots of money. If you talk to few people, you make very few dollars and money. So it's analogous to how big you want to build your business on just strictly sweat equity. You don't have to invest a lot of money. But that's why David Schmidt chose networking, because he was a young company. He was an inventor. He wasn't blessed with a tremendous amount of capital. And so he looked at the efficiency of network, and he understood how our product is so effective, and people that use it, they want to tell people. So it was a very natural way to take the product out. Then you look at the fact that this industry does over $100 billion, and you've heard a lot of the companies. It's Avon, it's Discovery Toy, it's Prepaid Legal, it's Amway. I mean, there's hundreds of companies, especially when you look international, all that subscribe to this channel. So don't look at networking as sort of a fluke or a hybrid or sort of a place to run and hide. Not at all. In fact, if you take a lot of folks that are moving their products out through these other channels, and if they could be blessed with a distribution channel of 40, 50,000 distributors and pay them, they'd much rather be in this environment because this money isn't spent until the product's sold. Now think about that for efficiencies. Procter & Gamble, with their $5 billion ad agency, a lot of that money is spent hoping to attract buyers. Not the case with networking. With LifeWave, LifeWave doesn't spend a penny until the product is sold. So what you end up with, in summary, is you end up with a very efficient system, no friction. In other words, we have no receivables, right? It's cash in and the product is shipped. Now, that's nice because you and I don't have to absorb the bad debts of other people. Not the case with a lot of other channels. The other thing is that you don't have to pay until the product is sold. In other words, the revenue comes in, then the commissions are paid. Now, that's another very, very smart strategy because you don't have the lag time. I mean, just imagine if you had to fire up advertising, do all the manufacturing, get your 500 TV sets finally into Best Buy. You haven't made a penny yet. You hope they sell to recoup all the dollars that you've had to put out there front. Now, it works, there's no question about it, but it takes a lot of money, a lot of capital, and capital has a cost to it. When all those efficiencies and all of this what I call friction disappears, and you have the efficiencies of networking, it enables people like you and I to start a business and very little capital, but make a very, very serious income. So again, if you want to use this to just share with people, if you get that question, well, gee, why'd they choose networking? Let them take a look at this training video because it's a powerful part of the way our product gets to the market. The other thing that's enabled us to do is to get international very quickly. We didn't have to open up an office in Manila right away, in Taipei right away, in Tokyo right away. We did it as the rep base grew. All of a sudden, we had a rep base go in Israel. Tremendous people growing like crazy, buying product. So that encouraged the company to set up an infrastructure. But it was done after the pull was there. Okay? And you're going to be the beneficiary of a lot of that growth if you obviously get dialed in with LifeWave, work it hard. So in closing, understand that this is a very serious channel to take goods and services to the market, and many, many companies wish that they had the built-in rep base that we've got that are enjoying our products and telling folks that they care about. So thanks very much for reviewing this, and those that are a little bit concerned, well, have them watch and it'll really help.